good evening. I think we're live. We have a packed agenda. We've got a lot to talk about. And so I'm here with Jacques. Welcome, Jacques. Hello. Good to see you.
Hey, David.
Now, for those of you tuning in, please check us out at Facebook. You can get involved with comments and chat, live chat, ask questions of Jacques or myself. Also, we're at X. You can participate in the live chat there as well, or at YouTube. And I don't have the YouTube link on screen, but you'll find it. So we are at Libertarian CDN at X, or you can QR code if you're. Unless you're, I met a man recently who was absolutely against QR codes, so I understand that. But it is also a convenient way to just go to the address at Facebook and get involved. Let's get started. I have something to show you, Jacques, that this showed up on my stream today, and I thought this was just an incredible mystery. I wonder what could be the reason for this. Do you have any insight?
Well, I mean, Haiti, as we know, has been under a dictatorship for many, many, many decades, where the market is not allowed to function. But I have actually a little bit of insight in the country, and it's quite. In some ways, you can draw some parallel with some of the stuff that's going on, coming from the people on the left. But I had a niece and her husband. They went to work as volunteer missionary type in Haiti for a while, and they observed. And it's very interesting, right? Young people, early 20s, very idealistic in terms of wanting to help people, what have you. And after 6 months, certainly he couldn't wait to get out of there, because he was absolutely convinced that the culture was so bad that he just couldn't see a solution to the problem. But what he saw was the occasional person would be, say, entrepreneurial and would come up with an idea to make things better, and then everybody around them wanting to pull these people down, not liking, I guess, the idea that he was likely to be better off by bringing these ideas to the market. So it's a terrible place. I mean, it's very, very complex. I don't want to say that this is simply a question of the dictatorship, but that certainly doesn't help, right? I mean, you have a totally non-functioning market, interference on the part of the government all the time. Yeah, and the Dominican Republic is not that. So
it's the same body of land. They were both colonized in the recent hundreds of years, one by Spain, one by France. They've both been, to some extent, self-governing for many decades. And I'm just amazed by this pattern. I guess we'll just never know the answer, will we? I have another. Do you want to say more to that?
No, I was simply going to say it is very complex, and I think we have to be careful not to, attribute the problem to a single cause. But non-functioning markets is a big one.
I would agree. So the next piece of news that we should talk about is apparently Mark Carney is throwing his hat in the ring to become a member of Parliament. I have a quick video here we can listen to. So stop me if you want to pause the video or cut it, but otherwise I'm just going to let it play. How's that?
Okay.
All right. And let me know with a thumbs up that you can hear it. I want to make sure people can hear it. Here we go from the top. By the way, for those of you just listening in, maybe you're not watching, you might be just driving or listening. Mark Carney says, the tweet here, the post on X, it says that Mark Carney says he's taking the necessary steps to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader. If Mark Carney becomes Prime Minister, Canada is finished. He'll be tasked with ushering in central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, and a social credit system. This is a post from @government_corrupt. It ends the post with, Mark Carney is evil and dangerous. Here's the video. Here we go.
Period, or that was
From the top.
Elected office, for all of its faults, and there are many faults, there's a lot of nonsense to it if you watch Question Period or the House of Commons, but it's still the most important way to make a difference, bar none. Having said that, are you going to put your name on a ballot at some point?
Well, I mean, I'm taking steps to, that support that. Look, the opportunity may present itself. This is what I can do right now, and I'm doing it to the best of my ability.
I like that you're interested in politics. I like that good people are interested in politics. I think it's necessary that serious people are still interested in doing this. And I worry that when you've got a certain crass attack before anything else approach to politics, and I had a front row seat to Pierre Poilievre even before he was the leader, try and run roughshod over you, knowing that you might be in politics one day.
If we were in a situation where the stakes weren't so high, in part because of the start of your question, in part because of the unseriousness of some of those in public life. It's not trying to find solutions, it's trying to destroy and cut down. And, you know, who knows what comes after that? It's not clear what comes after that. So the stakes are high, so that pulls, you know, that.
I saw your hand. Go ahead, Jacques.
Yeah, once again, it is mind-bending that liberal people are constantly accusing other parties of what their leader has been doing. I mean, I hear nothing out of Trudeau other than demonization of opponents. I mean, he does this constantly. And now, I mean, you know, I once read, like, some guy who was in awe of Carney saying, this guy is always the smartest guy in the room. The only thing I can deduce from this is that he's in a room full of liberals, because it's not very difficult to be the smartest guy in the room when you're with a bunch of liberals. Because I can tell you, Carney and a room full of my actuarial colleagues would probably be the least intelligent person in the room. I mean, this guy does not impress me at all. Like, he gives himself, again, it's self-proclamation that he's a good guy, that he's serious, right? Because, again, accusing people of being unserious. Anyway, keep on playing this. But I mean, it's just a page out of the liberal. Let's tarnish other people and demonize them.
Yeah, exactly. We're better people than our opponents.
Yeah,
this is their platform generally. Here we go.
Pulls me towards trying to be part of it, because this is, you know, it's our country, it's my country, and I care about it, and so wanting to be there.
You're going to put up with an incredible amount of hate, and an incredible, you know, look what the Trudeau's got to put up with fuck Trudeau flags. And his kids have to listen to fuck Trudeau chants at Ultimate Fight events. So you're ready for that?
Look, yes is the short answer.
It's not hate, it's criticism. And we should be allowed to criticize our governments. And sometimes criticism is fueled by genuine frustration. And, well, I find it very interesting. Mark Carney looks the part. He's obviously very successful with organizations that he's been involved with over the years. You don't become the Bank of Governor, or the Bank of Canada governor, and you don't get involved in the UN unless you're among the elite. So he's already among the elite. He'll no doubt be surrounded by wealthy donors who will stand by him in place of Trudeau. I worry that he might actually become the leader of the Liberal Party, and he's a smooth talking. You know, there's enough gullible people that will vote for him, I think.
Well, I think we have to experience from the Ignatieff experience, right? People thought, wow, Harvard professor is going to come in, and of course he was a complete lead balloon. I'm not saying it's going to be the case, but that Carney would completely flame out wouldn't surprise me at all. I also want to add that this was not part of the clip, but I mean, this guy, and again, you know, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a conservative. If I were a conservative, I wouldn't be here tonight. But he was saying, you know, like, I got to get involved because the conservatives understand nothing about the economy. Like, they don't understand how the economy works. Okay, let me point out to people that Carney has to be, I mean, every evidence points to the fact that he must be a Keynesian as an economist. If he's a Keynesian, then he doesn't understand the economy, because that's a framework that doesn't work. It's never worked. It cannot work. The fact that he believes...
Sorry, but sorry to interrupt you, but it's the framework that's ruining our economy right now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that he continues to believe that one guy can decide what the interest rate should be, as opposed to leaving it to the market, tells you he's a statist, he's a central planner, advocating all kinds of stuff that has been proven wrong over and over and over again. So he is in no position to start accusing other parties of not understanding economics, because he certainly does not. I mean, he and his cronies, again, got completely embarrassed by their inability to put two and two together and print massive amount of money. And for some reason, that was not going to create inflation. I mean, that should discredit all of these people immediately. So the comment there, it says it's evil and dangerous, I think it says. I think it's about spot on.
Yeah, yeah. We have some comments coming in from people watching. Bad audio. Okay, so there's bad audio at YouTube. Please, I'm not sure what to do about that right now because I don't hear the problem myself. Let us know if it improves or it gets worse, or try another platform. Please go to X or go to Facebook and see if it's a problem there as well. But thanks for letting us know. There's a question here. It says, are there any banking rules you would allow as libertarians? Jacques, do you have a comment or a response to that?
I would ask the person who posts to expand a little bit, because I'm not quite sure.
Well,
related to fractional banking,
for example.
No, fractional banking is fraud. And now, you know, as a libertarian, I wouldn't get involved. Simply, what would happen though is that there'd be full disclosure, and people would know that if the money is deposited at the bank, they couldn't access it overnight because 90% of it's been lent out. That would be, you know, sort of public knowledge, and then people would know to stay away from that.
Cool. I'm worried about our audio. So people are saying it's crackling, staticky. Let us know if it changes. Tell me if it's just me or just Jacques or both of us. But I'm going to continue. I have another item here I want to bring up on screen. The next item on our agenda here. Let's go to the New Brunswick election here. Let's like, this is big news. New Brunswick just ousted their progressive conservative premier and opted for NDP again. I know you've got thoughts to share about this, and we talked with Keith Tays the other night about. He's the leader of the Libertarian Party of New Brunswick. Over to you, Jacques.
Right. So speaking of Keith and the Libertarian Party of New Brunswick, I know some people will be disappointed, but I remind everyone that the party was only officially registered last July, so they really did not have a lot of time to prepare, and I think they made a valiant effort, so kudos to them. But as an aside, like this result and some of the comments that have been made, I'll tell you what's happened while the Conservatives were in power, they made a valiant reduction in the debt level of the party, which I now, I'm going to make a prognostication. I suspect that after, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years of balancing the books, which also was quite commendable, the Liberals are going to start running deficits immediately. And the part that I find so dishonorable is that they will be able to get away with it because the previous party put such a dent in the debt. Right? It's always easy to complain about people who, like they haul out the term austerity and what a terrible, the non-caring people. But it's the very fact that they actually get the house sort of in order that then allows them to come out with, deficit spending again. I suspect that's what's going to happen. And, it's funny because the leader of the party made healthcare the number one issues. But it's not like the Liberals haven't been in power in New Brunswick. And under their leadership, healthcare was a disaster. And it will be again. People talk a good game, but their policies are not going to solve the problem. So, bad outcome.
I'm going to send a message to our Restream support technicians and see if they have any advice about the audio. But let's carry on. The show must go on. Anything more to say about the election or new topic?
No, we can move on. It's just, again, shout out to the Libertarian Party. They did fine given the circumstances, and I think we can expect bigger and better things the next time around.
Yes, and Keith seems ambitious and a reasonable man. Hopefully he'll keep going on. So more news from Eastern Canada. I'm going to bring up a post at X from the food processor. This says that the Nova Scotia government announced today that it will reduce its sales tax by 1% starting April 1st, 2025. The comment is made by the food processor. He says, instead of blaming the private sector for price gouging, they are cutting taxes to help lower the cost of living. What a novel concept for Canadians. So it should be noted that the Premier of Nova Scotia is a progressive conservative. What are your thoughts about this, Jacques?
Well, I think the comment is spot on. Like for once, it's interesting, of course, that elected officials always sit in judgment of us, in the private sector, that we're all evil, we're all out to get people and what have you, while, of course, giving themselves not only a pass on any criticism, but actually a pat on the back. But, I dare say, when, for example, a grocer that has a profit margin of 3% gets accused of gouging, while I don't know how many salary increases MPs have voted themselves over the last little while, 4, maybe 5, the fact that on average, when the government turns a service that used to be provided by the government to the private sector, prices come down by about 50%, and somehow they get away with never being accused of gouging the taxpayers. Again, it's gaslighting to the best form possible. Anyway, the food professor is onto something here, and then that's good of him to call it out.
Agreed. I have one more here for you, also from X. This one caught my eye. I don't know who this person is, I'll be clear. The person is Andrew J.W. Haynes. The post says this:
Trudeau, and by the way, this was posted on June 25th of this year, so a few months ago. I find it interesting because it turns out his predictions made in this post have played out in real life. His prediction is good. So this is what he posted on June 25th. He says, Trudeau post-loss of Toronto St. Paul's. The rational thing for Trudeau and the Liberal Party is for him to leave and a new leader to come in. I predict Trudeau will not leave, and a core of the Liberal cabinet will protect him and allow him to stay on into 2026. Why do I say this? Because I have dealt with third world governments for years, and I know the type. Politicians involved in serious crimes stay to the end to avoid discovery and prosecution. Much more damage ahead for Canada under a devil-may-care Trudeau Liberal government. They won't dial the madness down. They are going to turn it up to 11 to win favor from their future NGO and UN employers. The criminal madness has only just begun. Very interesting, considering the news this week that some in the Liberal caucus are trying to get rid of Justin Trudeau, but the prediction here is that a core of the Liberal cabinet will protect him, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to disagree with this guy. I mean, the number of things where the Liberals have stopped inquiries, limited inquiries, redacted texts is enormous. And you would have to think that the next government will be able to open up a number of these things and get to the bottom of them. And I suspect, of course, that when you behave as such, it's because you have things to hide. And if you have things to hide, it's probably because they're either criminal in nature or make you look really, really bad. So, yeah, I can see why they want to postpone discovery for as long as possible.
Let's move on. Thank you for that comment. The next thing I'm going to do is play a video. So now we're getting into the topic that brought us together for this episode in the first place. The topic here is about the fact that some of our MPs in Ottawa want to criminalize all kinds of speech. More and more types of speech are now in the category of things that they want to criminalize. And the most recent is this private members bill. Do you want to set this up and discuss it, or should we just dive into the comments made in House of Commons?
Well, I want to set it up simply in terms of you will, when people hear this, I just want to point out the usual tricks that they play in order to try to get, I mean, most of these things are assertions. They're not facts. They're not logical. They appeal to emotion. And I just wanted to the extent that I can, equip people to dissect these things because they're really, really awful. Like in a class of philosophy, for example, these people will get an F. It's so poorly articulated. It is, again, a bunch of assertions that are unproven. Yeah, let's roll it. And I think I will raise my hand to ask you to stop it once in a while.
Sure. Yeah, I'll watch for that. Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to table an act to amend the Criminal Code promotion of hatred against Indigenous peoples. If passed, this bill would add to the Criminal Code the offense of willfully promoting hatred against Indigenous peoples by condoning, denying, justifying, or downplaying the harm caused by the residential school system in Canada.
Okay, so notice you can't downplay, justify. I've already forgotten two of them, but let me address. Okay, so downplay, right? If you downplay, well, first of all, what does that mean, right? To downplay something. Well, from her perspective, right? She would say the whole thing has been an unmitigated disaster. It was done with evil intention. And if you come out and you point to the facts. So, for example, I want to remind people, the Truth and Reconciliation document, like 250 pages, has a chapter, I believe it's called Warm Memories. And it's a chapter entirely devoted to Indigenous people who have good recollection of what happened. Now, that's in the Truth and Reconciliation document. So if you point to this, would that be downplaying? Right? Like, she has, again, built, and this purely an assertion, right? She cannot back it up with facts, that the whole thing was evil machinations for the purpose of creating, and again, she hasn't mentioned this, but I understand now that when they use genocide, it's cultural genocide. So again, something made up. So it was entirely bad. And then if you question certain elements of it, the number of deaths or whatever, then know that you're not allowed to try to get to the truth. Keep on rolling.
Okay, here we go.
Calling irrefutable historical facts into question. A genocidal project that was recognized as such unanimously in the House. Survivors and their families deserve.
So recognized unanimously in the House. That's a joke. Yes, I know. They said that it was genocidal and what have you. Okay, I got news for her. A little while ago, like maybe 3 years, I was quite outraged by the whole thing because I thought I was mistaken, but I thought that the whole residential school was a coercive effort on the part of the government, that you had to send your kid, right? And it was for the purpose of trying to anglicize or westernize the people. Well, it turns out, because unlike her, I actually did some reading, and I quickly realized that my beliefs were not founded on what happened. How can you have a so-called an attempted cultural genocide when attendance at the school until 1922 was voluntary? What kind of a system tries to eradicate a culture by making it completely optional in terms of whether you want to join or not?
Sorry,
Like
1922, was that up until that point or since that point? Be clearer about the dates here.
Sorry. Up until 1922, attendance to residential schools was voluntary.
And what about after 1922?
Well, what happened is that I think I got the date right, but it's around there. That's when attendance to schools in general was mandatory.
Right. So up until age 16, attendance in schools throughout Canada in all jurisdictions was mandatory unless you had informed the school board that you wanted to homeschool the child. Because parents could still, I don't know that this is true on reserves, but parents in Canada can take responsibility of the education of their child by informing the school board that they will be homeschooled.
Yeah. Okay, but my point here is that, again, if you're going to accuse an entity of trying to commit cultural genocide, and then you say, but by the way, if you don't want to participate, that's fine. I mean, you can see the contradiction. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? So this is, again, an assertion, like this is a circular argument, right? She talks about how, well, the MP in the House unanimously voted on this as if it constitutes proof. I mean, there is so much virtue signaling going on in terms of this vote that
what MP is going to not raise their hand in favor of such a motion and be then vilified, terminated, canceled, destroyed? Mobs would show up at their house. Like there's a fear factor involved, no doubt.
All right, moving on.
Moving on. Okay, we're about halfway through this clip, and we'll carry on.
To heal from this intergenerational tragedy and be free from violent hate, and we cannot allow their safety and well-being to be put further at risk. All parliamentarians.
Okay. So we have to protect people like safety and well-being.
Yeah.
All right. So this is again where we have a complete dilution of words where new meaning come into play, right? If questioning some of the facts, some of the numbers is now equivalent to hate, you have turned the word hate into a meaningless word, because it's no longer like I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to hit you, or, like now I'm simply going to go to the library and read some books, and now that constitutes hate, and that somehow it's making people unsafe. I mean, anyone who would want to pursue the facts is not putting anybody's safety at risk. So this is conjuring up nightmarish scenario without zero evidence. Like, again, these is assertion to try to support her bill. Moving on.
Excellent. I'm getting information from the Restream technical support, and I've made an adjustment. So if you're watching, please let us know if the audio has improved at all. But here I'm going to carry on.
Stand firm against all forms of damaging hate speech, including the denial of the tragedy of the residential schools in Canada. And at a time of increasing residential school denialism, including from some parliamentarians, survivors, their families, and communities need protection and a platform to share our history. In honor of Orange Shirt Day, I extend this gift to you on behalf of me and all of my colleagues. May you find justice and healing in the protection of your stories. Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't know what the people did, but now there's echo every. There's an echo when I speak. There's an echo in the video.
Yeah. So the advice I was given was bad advice. To my previous settings. There's another clip. Let's play. And someone says when they played the video before it was perfect, now it has issues. Yeah. So we're trying different things, everyone. We're experimenting with an imperfect technology. I really appreciate that you're suffering through the bad audio and you're still here with us and you're listening in. So that's awesome. We will continue to study this after the broadcast and see if we can sort it out. Now, that was from aptnnews.ca. Thanks for the broadcast. I'm going to move now to a clip from CTV. And this is the same member of parliament now elaborating on, because he was being questioned about the bill. Here we go.
We need to deal with the rise of residential school denialism that has occurred since the discovery of the unmarked graves. We are 10 years out from the
unmarked graves, Jacques. Okay, I've really appreciated the work of Terry Glavin and others to explain why some of the graves are unmarked, and I think
In fact, David.
Was that?
In fact, David, I was going to say she's probably referring to the initial report about these holes in the ground, which at first people jumped to, but they've had months and months to work on this, and there hasn't been, again, a single substantiation of the original belief, right? Which tend to believe that to lead to think that these probably weren't, bodies buried and what have you. So she's repeating something that has not been proven, again, to advance her cause.
Well, let me clarify here, actually, because it has been known for many years that there are unmarked graves. So to be clear, unmarked graves is simply a burial site for a person that is unmarked. It doesn't have a headstone or it doesn't have a marking. And the reason for this is well known according to the Truth and Reconciliation report, that in some cases there was once a marker, but it was made of wood, let's say, and it has since decomposed or otherwise been, ruined by the elements. In other cases, the upkeep and care for these burial sites was granted to or given over to communities that surrounded an old church, and the communities didn't keep it up. So the markings on those burial sites were, again, ruined by the elements or blown away. The phrase unmarked graves, though, she's using this strategically. I agree with you on that part. She's using it strategically to link in people's minds the initial story of mass graves. And in that initial story from Kamloops, the chief herself said that these are not mass graves. That was the quote, but it was buried in the story after the headline, and journalists ran with the headline that were mass graves. And I think that, so I wanted to highlight that point. I think that if there will be any reconciliation, there must also be truth. And I worry that that these things are being separated. I'm going to play the clip.
Final report of the National Inquiry from the National Inquiries, the Truth and Reconciliation report, and they barely moved on many of the calls to action. And in the midst of this, we see a rise in denialism in 2023. All MPs unanimously supported a motion I put forward recognizing what happened in residential school as an act of genocide, according to, as it is defined, in fact, under the UN Article 2 UN Convention on Genocide. It's one thing to acknowledge that.
So the UN has a definition of cultural genocide, and apparently the actions of previous government and the church and others that facilitated the residential schools, apparently their actions match that definition. I don't know that, I haven't read the definition that the UN lays out. Have you? And is there a comment to be made here?
No, only to repeat that you cannot claim that you're trying to erase a culture if you make it voluntary.
So you would disagree with the notion that it was declared a genocide?
Well, I think genocide to me has to be coercive, right? Like, let's not. For example, let's assume for a minute that we're not talking cultural genocide, but the genocide like the Armenian one, as an example. Do you think those people had a choice? No, people would just walk in and kill them, right? Well, the same thing here. If you want to destroy someone's culture, you have to forcibly prevent them from speaking their language, from going about leading their lives in the way that they're accustomed to, and so forth. But if you say, hey, we have these schools here, and your children are welcome to come here, but you don't have to send them. How can you possibly argue that this? I mean, this is a very, if it meets the definition, then I'm saying it's a very poor definition.
So it's a broad definition, no doubt.
Like so again, to be crystal clear, if the government had, say, sent in the army to take these children by force from their parents and force them into these schools, so that, say, to teach them English and make sure they forget their native languages and what have you, that I would say yes. But it wasn't.
Okay, some people would argue that in fact did happen, and that's what, under the 60s scoop the history of the 60s scoop would be characterized as that. You know, Pierre Trudeau was in office when much of that was taking place during the late 60s, early 70s, throughout the 1970s.
Okay, well, fair enough. But I'm simply, like, I'm just trying to be a little bit more subtle about this than she is. Because she's treating, from the beginning to the residential schools, I think, ended in the 70s, I believe. Right? Like the whole period was cultural genocide. And I'm saying, well, you can't say that prior to 1922 when it was not coercive.
Interesting. And the same coercion after 1922 was active throughout Canada in all jurisdictions, because it became the law that all children had to go to a school until age 16 unless they were otherwise exempt or requested to be at home or whatever. But
well, David, given that education is a provincial responsibility, I would be a little bit more, although I think Indigenous Affairs, or so-called the Indian Act or whatever, I think gives that responsibility to the federal government. So it's entirely possible that in this case the federal government did mandate these things.
And I don't know those details. It would be really interesting to find that out. What is really problematic, though, about her intent is that there will be a day that my daughters are in their 20s, 30s, and every September their children are going to school and learning about the Truth and Reconciliation Day and being told things about the past. Because this is now every September for the rest of Canada's existence, apparently, that children will be taught that these horrible tragedies took place, and they won't be taught on balance, like some of the, what did you call them, warm memories from the Truth and Reconciliation Report?
Yeah, something like that.
So those kinds of things will be omitted. There will be a one-sided message forever, every September. And my children should have the right to ask about it and to say, well, what really did happen? And what this MP wants, apparently, is that no one should ever ask such questions. Believe that it was horrible, 100%, all terrible, forever and ever, we should all be damned, and don't ever question it. This is really dangerous.
Yes, regardless of the details, this is censorship of the worst form. I know it's been repeated many times, but let's say it again. These people, they're not so much against hate speech, they are against speech they hate. That's absolutely true. She can't stand the thought of somebody having a different opinion than she does, and she wants to use the coercive power of the state to muzzle them. It's unacceptable.
Let's carry on this clip.
Thing to act on it. Survivors, families, and communities are constantly being victimized by this growth in residential school denialism. We have to protect survivors and their story.
Yeah, they're victimized. I mean, if you're not like her, you may, and like nobody bothers you. I mean, again, it's completely over the top to say that people are victimized because someone questions certain elements of this. Like, I think, again, this is rooted in this idea that it's somehow a human right to go through life without being offended. That's certainly not the case. But it's the premise of many, many things that these people believe in.
Yeah. Well, Jacques, I think that this issue, what worries me is that Canadians will have this issue return every year now. Every September, it is official in our calendar. We're going to have an MP stand up in the House of Commons and claim that everyone is to be damned. And this will happen now as a matter of course and a matter of signaling their virtue every September.
I just don't know how this improves anything. When I learned of the Truth and Reconciliation effort, the initiative, I was fully in favor. Yeah, let's learn what happened. Let's make it known. Let the truth be told. And I guess we're facing this dilemma. Like, okay, so now what? Because forever into their future, my children will be damned by this. They'll be blamed. Why? They had no part of this. As far as I can tell, there were governments in our past that had every ability, every opportunity to address these issues in the past. And for whatever reasons, the problem was perpetuated. And it carried on. I don't know what to do about it. I think we have this huge dilemma. What I know for certain is that people need to be able to talk about it, question it, ask about it, write about it, and debate it. And any such law that would prevent that kind of discussion is just absolute authoritarianism and terrible for our country.
And let's be clear, this is not a single, this is the type of I just read today that in Britain there's a group now that's trying very hard to have X banned in that country. I mean, this is pervasive now. Like we just discussed an example tonight by discussing this clip, but it goes for just about anything again, where if you happen to disagree with members of the Liberal Party or NDP for that matter, then they want to pass a law to shut you down.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the time, Jacques. I'm in the mood to wrap it up. I think we're having some audio troubles, and you and I need to work on this.
Yeah.
And I'm in communication with an agent. Thank you very much for the customer service agent at Restream who is checking this out and watching the streams and giving me some advice behind the scenes. For those of you that have tuned in, thanks very much. You can become a member of the party. There's a QR code on screen, and you can connect with us at libertarian.ca. Anything to add? Last words?
No, let me just add, thank you for hanging in, guys. We'll try to fix that for the next round.